Weaving was really important here in Little Compton. Some families raised sheep for their wool, some grew flax to be made into linen, some people were spinning, some people were weaving, and some people were doing all of those things. Many families had some role to play in textile production. And if you lived in a textile producing house, many generations had some part to play. We have a beautiful painting here in the lobby of the Wilbur House that shows all of these generations working at once on this task. And for a lot of them, it was a 12 to 14 hour a day job. When you were 5 or so, you would have been started on carding. And carding is taking 2 wooden paddles with bristles on them, putting raw fiber between and combing them so that all of the fibers face the same direction and are ready to be spun into yarn or thread. Once you had mastered carding, became a little bit more detail-oriented and coordinated, you would move up in more and more complicated tasks. So this was a skilled profession, not just a side job. And if you could afford it, you would hire help or buy slaves so that they could do the more menial work and you could focus on weaving. We also have an interesting article on the wall of our Women's History exhibit that got me thinking. In this 1774 article, a visitor to Little Compton praises the townfolk who he never saw drinking British tea. And that was an act of boycott. It was rebellion because tea was being taxed heavily at that time. And it made me wonder about another common act of boycott, which was boycotting imported fabrics. Many people who could have afforded imported fabrics were choosing instead to use homespun, like what would have been made in Little Compton homes, as an act of political defiance, as a way of showing their patriotism. And so in a town that was patriotic enough to boycott British tea and had a lot of textile producing families in town, it isn't too far of a leap to wonder if they may have been participating in that boycott also. So with that little bit of history behind us, let's start weaving. We use these to visit schools, but we aren't really passing these out or visiting schools. So how can we have this same effect at home of giving weaving a try? So what you will need is a cardboard box, 2 different colors of yarn, and some scissors. So the first step is to cut out a rectangle, and every 1/2 inch on this side I have cut a notch, just like on that wooden loom has the little notches. I tied right here around this first little tooth, and then I wound it down, and instead of wrapping around the back and going around this way, what you actually want to do is just go around that tooth and go back down the front. So on the front it has these up and down threads, this is called the warp, and on the back it just has these little tails that are around the back of the loom. The next step is to get a shuttle ready. So this is the one that comes with our wooden set that we use in schools, and I did a very rudimentary one also out of cardboard. Again, just a rectangle with some notches cut out, and you just wrap the yarn around. And next we have the pickup stick. So this is the wooden one that comes in the Colonial loom set that we use in school programs. And here's one that I've made out of cardboard. It's not terribly sturdy, but it gets the job done, and you'll see how it works in a second. And the last item is a beater, and this one actually came that is cardboard. And if you have pinking shears, you can make this zigzag. If you don't have pinking shears to be able to do that super easily, you can use a comb. Here is a section that I have already worked on, and we will be using this pickup stick to do the over-under pattern that we had the kids do with their paper weaving. So you alternate over-under, and if you started, this one is over the last string, I want it to start under on the next one. And this is the magic of the pickup stick. So once you have this all set in, you turn it and it'll stand up on its own, and that gives you a space to be able to put the shuttle through really easily. And then once you've done that, take out the pickup stick, and you want to pull the yarn so that there is an extra, but not so hard that you end up bending these threads towards each other. So it takes a little bit of practice to get that just right. And with the beater, you're just going to push down. And this one, my threads are actually further apart than the zigzags on this, and that's totally fine. As long as it's doing the job of pushing these towards each other gently, no problems at all. So again, I'm going to start from this side, and on this part it's going over this last thread. So I'm going to start under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. And as you go, this tip here of the pickup stick might get a little bit frayed, so you might want to tape it together if it starts to fall apart, just to avoid having to keep cutting out new pickup sticks. And again, we just give that a turn on its side. It stands up to give us the space to pass through, and this time I'm going towards myself because that's where the thread started from on this side, so I need to bring it back to this side. So you can see that this is not necessarily a hard task, but it's a very time-consuming task. If you'd like to save what you've made, I've actually got almost enough to just make myself a coaster, so maybe I will keep going and do that instead of a bookmark. What you would do is clip these and tie them like tassels on a scarf, and that would ensure that your weaving did not come undone. And you probably want to double knot them opposite directions, the square knot, so that they are more secure. So happy weaving!